Okay, hopefully everything is good for now. Going to, starting soon, we'll talk about the Houdini 21 keynote. I'm going to take a look at some of the new features and give my thoughts. Going to give some time for people to get in here. Oops. Let me get everything set up. Give me a moment here. So we'll give people a little bit of time to get in here, and then we'll start talking about some of this stuff. I want to take a look at these new features. Oh, hopefully everything is all good on our end. It's kind of late. We're going to stream. We're going to talk about some of the new features. We're going to take a look at just some of the stuff. I haven't been able to actually watch the whole thing, but I'm going to take a look at some of the things that I thought were interesting. That's some of the stuff that I have actually been able to take a look at in the actual keynote itself right now. But like I said, I haven't been able to watch the full thing, unfortunately. So we will hopefully be able to take a look at some of the interesting features. Like I said, the cops is kind of what I wanted to take a look at the most. That's one of the things that I thought was going to be the most enjoyable to look at. Lots of new features there and super, super cool stuff. So we'll take a look at all of that. Give me just a second here. Putting it in Discord for anybody that wants to take a look. All right. Let's get my screen organized and then we'll start talking about these new features in just a minute. I'll look at stuff, give people just a second to come in here since I just put that into Discord. Pop out our chat here. Let me get this pulled over. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and start taking a look at some of the new features. First thing that I want to say, we're going to be going through, let me actually just get rid of some of that, clear up some of this space here. First thing I want to say about Houdini 21 is just based off of some of the things that I've seen so far with this presentation, the keynote presentation. I know everyone wants to talk about Blender and all of its amazing features, and it's a great software, don't get me wrong, but I personally feel like this is a major step forward for Houdini as far as getting more towards that vein of Blender, where it's a one-stop shop for kind of everything as far as your 3D workflow goes. And personally, I feel like, and I've thought this since I started using Houdini, right when I first started learning it, is that if you don't know Houdini and you're not currently learning it, then you need to. And I think that it is going to be something that, if you are looking to get into the industry, if you don't have that knowledge of Houdini at all, if you don't have any knowledge, that's going to be a major issue trying to get a job. I think Houdini is going to be one of those softwares that you're like Maya has been for so long, that if you don't know how to use it, then you're basically shooting yourself in the foot when you're trying to get a job. I think Houdini is making major strides in a lot of different areas. Animation is one of them. That's what the first like hour of the keynote presentation was, and lots of really awesome stuff coming to the animation side of things. I'm not going to be taking a look at that, mostly because I haven't messed with any of that really, as far as like character animation goes. So I don't really have a whole lot to comment as far as like this looks awesome, I need to start using this. But I did want to take a look at the other things that are shown off, some of the new improvements to rendering, the viewport, geometry, workflows, and specifically cops later on. And like I said, if you're not using Houdini, if you're not familiar with it, you definitely need to start learning it. Lots of really awesome things coming to 21, and things that are just going to speed up everyone's workflows. Whether you're you know a character animator or you're just trying to make textures, doing motion design type stuff, Houdini 21 is going to have some amazing new features. So let's take a look here. Starting off, I wanted to start kind of at this like hour and a half in, with this geometry and environments and stuff. The viewport updates. Let's kind of scroll through here and look at some of these features. So first thing he talks about here is this shot sculpting, which looks pretty awesome. I'm going to skip through this though. Really interesting kind of UI here. They're actually going to be updating the UI, which I thought was kind of interesting. Sounds like there's going to be some new stuff coming, but some new like animation type layer effect type stuff going on here, and the ability to kind of manipulate your geometry. I don't know if this is specific to the sculpt tool, but being able to kind of manipulate your geometry and have it blend, nicely with this editor, something that is going to be interesting to take a look at. The next thing that they talk about was this quad remesh. So we had the quad remesh tool before, really awesome tool, but they're making it just even better. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of play through this and just kind of talk over it. So we have the ability to add in these little like guides, which we sort of had before, but it looks like this is kind of cleaned up a lot of that, with being able to have these guides really direct where your edge flow goes. So if I look here, this is more of an organic model. So it's not just to, these hard surface models where we really want to keep these edges, but there's a lot better just retopology in general with the quad remesh. But they show off this really awesome like chest model, and then they show it obviously with some not so great topology, but then we move into the retopologized version, where I really want to highlight just how nice it looks on these edges here. Very, very nice preservation of the details there. This is obviously with 100,000 polygons, but it really holds up as they go through this, and they show that it goes all the way down to 10K polys and It does a really good job of preserving those details. So I'll be interested to try this out and see how this holds up on models that have a lot more fine, finer detail, kind of in the same areas, like maybe like a face or something that has like wrinkles and things where a lot of detail is going to be necessary. But yeah, so lots of really welcome changes with that. But they've also added this unsubdivide, which honestly, it surprises me that we haven't had this before. Basically, a node that's going to take a mesh and do what it says, which is unsubdivide it. You have some different options here as far as the algorithm. So we have like our Catmull-Clark, the Houdini Catmull-Clark, those types of things, the open subdivision surface, those type of things as far as using them to subdivide your meshes. But now you can unsubdivide them as well. Then they move on to this COPS Baker, essentially, which is or like this whole workflow of like COPS baking. So we have this high-res sculpture that they have here. I think this was just probably something that was generated inside of Houdini. Then they remeshed it with the UVs and then added the COPS textures. So the most important thing that they talk about here is actually being able to UV these with a new UV node. So we're going to have ability to take some points, and it's going to be fed into this new node, which is going to work extremely quickly. So it's going to take those points. He's just using a group random. It's going to generate these UV islands, which happens super quick. You see it here as he changes this. This is going to be something that's going to be a really awesome workflow for changing or adding UVs to your mesh. We had the labs UV, like auto UV, which works really good. It does essentially this same thing, but it was kind of slow. So this works extremely quickly. And you can see here that they're using the auto or the quad remesher as well to remesh these models and generate these nice quadded up models, and then adding the UV tools on top of that, and we get some really nice stuff going on here. Here, let's see. Oh, this is where they talk about, I'll play through this. This is where they start talking about the baker, I believe, for COPS. So we've got basically this tool that allows you to create these crates. You got the low res and the high res models. And then we have this baker for Copernicus, which is super, like, this is insanely fast at how quickly it bakes it out. Like, what you're seeing is happening in real time. So you're going to see that he goes and outputs this to a preview material, which is he's going to wire in like the AO and displacement or something else. And he gets this, happening as on real time. And you can go through and change all this stuff. And like he's remapping it here, but you can get these really nice maps just baked out in real time in COPS. But there's also one in Karma, so you can bake out, which we'll look at later when they get to it. But you can bake out your basically textured things from, if you're using Material X, you can bake that out to an actual texture using Karma with lighting information and stuff involved in that if you want as well. Let's scroll through here. So these are all some of the outputs that you can output. Here they're showing a different model. And then you can see on the left here, we have this high-res model, and then this is just the low-res with that ambient occlusion and normals applied to it. So it works very, very well from these examples. These models look almost identical, except for obviously this is going to be a lot lower res model. They also talk about how it can generate your cages, which is what's used to kind of bake out the textures. You can do this on the fly with the texture map baker, or you can do it on your own with your own model if you want. You can all edit that kind of in real time, and it all bakes out super fast. I'm really excited to give that a try. They also talk about a triplanar node. So they have a new triplanar node in COPS. You can make it yourself, and Tagma, I think, had a video on how to make a triplanar setup inside of COPS. I didn't end up making it myself just because I figured that this was something that was going to be coming in Houdini 21, and so I just left it, on the cutting room floor, I guess you'd say, for the time being. So that's definitely a welcome change. Where'd my play bar go? Definitely a welcome addition there with that. Then they talk about the Karma ray tracer and GPU baker. So you can see that it uses Karma to bake out the textures. It's got that GPU backend, is what they say, to generate some of the stuff for the textures. So it seems to work pretty quickly. And you can bake out like all your different maps. So as long as one thing that he does mention is as long as it is a Material X setup, you can bake out your textures to disk. So you can do things like procedural textures inside of Karma and Material X, and then you can bake them out to disk. So you're not having to, calculate the whole frame or material network. They also move on to this height field. So height field erosion 3.0. And let me tell you, it looks pretty darn good. Let's skip to where they actually showed off. This is not the best example. I don't remember where it was at in the actual presentation, but there's a better example of the erosion in my opinion. So here, we'll play through some of this and you can see kind of what's going on. So this height field erosion 3.0 runs off of Copernicus. If you don't know, Copernicus it's been able to do things with height fields. I actually just posted a video about that with Houdini 20.5, but it's been optimized a lot more inside of Houdini 21. Let's see. Hey, everyone, the Journal UX for Houdini is taking a big leap. Yeah, they're doing a lot more with the UI. Sounds like going forward. That's something that they talked about in the presentation. So excited to see what comes of that. But here you can see just how quickly the erosion works. So this is insanely fast. This is faster than okay, I've been using Gaia a little bit more recently, and it works pretty quick, but you have to wait for it to bake. And I'd be interested to see what the resolution of this height field is. He doesn't ever say, what the resolution is, whether it's, I would guess it's probably 1024, but I guess it could be higher. And I'd be interested to see what that is, to see, just how fast this actually works. So it does work pretty quickly. You can layer on these height field erosions and do some interesting things with that. And then it also, you can layer things in between there as well. So it's a very nice workflow, very quick to iterate off of, because the erosion node itself is so fast. You also have all these different settings, so you can really play around with them and see what each one individually does. And it happens so quickly that you can really get a good sense of what it actually is doing. Whereas some other things, other tools, or even like the old height field erode nodes, you'd have to really wait to see kind of what was going on. It's a lot less interactive. Here you can see I'm just kind of playing with it, getting some deeper looks into it. And then they start to talk about how you can bring this into COPS. So let's jump to the start of that. So you can use your regular SOP import, and then they've got you were just rasterizing the geometry to layer, which allows you to work inside of COPS. Interesting here, let's take a look. Set imports from geometry. So I don't know that this was something that was in there as far as 20.5 was. You also see a little bit of the new UI. You can select multiple parameters at once, which is pretty cool. Also, this by default is going to recognize that it's a height field. So if you don't know basically how Copernicus works, it's going to be a 2D height field, but it comes in when you export it without a name. So I'm guessing that it's just recognizing that there's a name on the SOP import there. And then obviously height fields have their primitive name as height. So it's going to recognize that, and then it's going to automatically set this up as a height field in your viewport in Copernicus, which then allows you to just bring in some COPS nodes and play with those. Here he's adding in some terracing to that. So interesting stuff that you can do with there. Here in a minute, he's going to use this to drive the, colors as well. So here he's adding some color to that, and you can get some really awesome looking results with this. So lots of new masking and stuff coming to Copernicus for height fields makes it a lot easier to generate these types of setups. And I think that this is going to be something that'll be super fun to play around with. Then they do this machine learning kind of setup, which is interesting. I'm not sure how much I'm going to play around with this, but you can. I don't think this erosion looks very good. I don't think this, looks all that great. But it looks like you can, um, use these to generate your own. He talks about being able to generate your own setups with this machine learning stuff. So you could probably export your own models. You could train it on your own to create, some like preset things. If you have some preset like things that you do a lot. Maybe you want to do some like rocky landscapes. You do those a lot, and then you can train your own model, and then you can just kind of paint them on yourself. Yeah, Cops is bringing a ton of possibilities. I'll talk about that kind of a little bit later when we get to that. But I have a ton of ideas already. Very excited to play around with that. And also something that's really interesting that they talk about is that these actually tile because they're brought into Copernicus. It's running off of, the COPS nodes. So they tile, you can make, these infinite landscapes that tile really, really easily. Really cool stuff. You can also drive your machine learning, your neural terrain paint. You don't have to paint on it. You can actually use a noise, which is pretty interesting. Let's see. Wish they would fix the ragdolls. They're honestly really bad for Houdini being a simulation engine, endorphin level. I don't know that I fully agree with that. I get where you're coming from, but I do think that it will be beneficial for certain situations. How much does hex tiling help? Depends on what you're doing. I think hex tiling is good for things on like terrains and stuff where they're very large, scale stuff. But on models that are, a lot smaller, it's not going to be so much of a help. There's also a triplanar, a hex tiling triplanar node that's been added to COPS, I believe. I think that was in their presentation. Not in this presentation, but the old one. Maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I'm pretty sure that was one of the nodes that was listed at the end. So here they're talking about some of the lab stuff. So they've had this, for a little bit now, the biomes generator stuff. Really, I mean, it's awesome stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it's not anything new. Let's kind of skip through some of this. This is something that was new though. So they've changed the viewport. Vulkan viewport is the default. It has been since 20.5. But now it's got ray traced shadows, and I forget what else they said, but it's a lot higher quality viewport than what it has been. And I think that this is going to give you a lot better, visualization. Oh, fog. That was the other thing that they said that was showing in the viewport now. I know there's some issues with volumes in the viewport, in the Vulkan viewport, so hopefully they resolved that, which I'm guessing they probably did. But a lot better viewport quality. And then this also feeds into something that we'll see later on is the Material-X Open PBR Uber shader is also something that is viewable in your viewport. We've got some new things on ambient occlusion in the viewport as well. You can kind of watch through some of this. Not sure that it's something that's going to be, all that, important for my workflow, but definitely something that gives you a good idea of what's going on with your scene as far as like some shadowing and stuff goes. They invest more time into it and get it to. Oh, I get what you're saying. I think that they probably, I think that you actually probably can with some of the new things that they've implemented. You can probably get to some of that type of behavior that you're talking about. This confused me a little bit. We have light setups, I guess. So I don't know. They talk about this. You can have different lighting setups. I don't know if this is in Solaris. You can set, like, you can create some type of lighting setup somehow and then be able to use that in your Vulkan viewport. I'm not exactly sure here, but you see that they have light instancing here. They talk about that. I'm not, like I said, not 100% sure what exactly they're referring to for this. I'll have to dive into that once this comes out. Then they've focused on Gaussian splats for a little bit, which I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on, but I did want to talk about it because they show off their new shader. They have this new shader for it, which, I mean, this looks pretty good. And this is all, I don't think this is out yet. One of the features, I think it was this, they said it wasn't like ready to be released yet, but they're working on it and they're going to have it out as like one of the first like production build updates. But I did want to talk about this in particular because they talk about using this to integrate objects here, which we'll see in a second. Which just my first thought with this, and you can actually render these with Karma now as well, Gaussian splats. And my first thought with this was this is probably quite literally going to be the future for like compositing 3D stuff into scenes. You're gonna have these Gaussian splat, whatever it takes. I don't know a whole lot about Gaussian splats and the process of capturing them, but I see this as being something that they take on, on set and then are given to the animators or whatever to composite your 3D effects, your VFX into, and have your, instead of like camera tracking and stuff, you're gonna have a Gaussian splat is gonna be what you're given, and then you're gonna be expected to composite your whatever into it, sort of like what they're doing here. As you can see, it's all in 3D space and it works well. And I'm assuming that it's going to be able to catch shadows and stuff like that. I could be wrong on that. You saw them going through a city, and then they move on to some Solaris and Karma stuff. Yeah, I know there's some GSOPS plugin tools. I have not messed around with them at all. They don't interest me a ton at the moment, but at the same time, I also have so much I want to take a look at that they're not taking a priority right now. Gaussian splats are not actual geometry. I have issues with anything physics or animation wise from video, not like in this example. Okay, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, they also have, and I think it was Houdini 20. They released some tools that take point clouds, which from my understanding is basically what a Gaussian splat is. They take the point clouds and they turn them into geometry. They were specifically used for, or at least the thought process was they'd be used for your, I'm drawing a blank, photogrammetry. So you can take that, the Gaussian splats, use those photogrammetry tools, and then you could use that for creating, some actual geometry that can interact with your simulations and stuff. That's my thought process anyways. So then we move on to Solaris and Karma stuff, and there is some very important stuff here. He talks about, I think this is where he talks about rendering the Gaussian splats. Then they talk about some of the shot stuff for, or like I forget what he calls it. There's something they're introducing for the USD like workflows. Maybe your shot load here. So basically some new preset stuff that they brought in for making it easier to get into Solaris is my understanding of it. I've skinned Gaussians really well with Houdini, nothing like it. Yeah, I would recommend giving that workflow a shot. I forget the name of that node. There's two nodes. One generates the normals, so the point cloud or the the nodes know which way to face the surface, and then the other one actually generates the surface. And there's a ton of different things to be able to use and like dial in your geometry. But here you can see him messing with the shots and the different stuff with this. Good for people that don't have any sort of setup as far as like USD goes, probably. I don't know. Maybe take a look at that. We'll have to see. So they also made some updates to the viewport for Solaris and the scene graph tree here. They've added some information that's more like readily available. This is something that I think is actually really cool, being able to select things, and then what they're doing is they're twirling down this, and that's just making that stuff visible. So anything they twirl down is showing in your viewport, and there's some different controls and stuff for that as well. This is really good for like organizing your scene, I would think, but we'll have to play around with it. They move on to talking about this, which is a pretty complex thing. One of the things that I want to kind of focus on is the opacity here. This is not actually opacity. This is a like a sprite map from Redshift. I forget what they call it, but basically it's a faster way of generating opacity maps or using like opacity maps. So normally when you go to render out anything with opacity, it still sees the geometry and it recognizes that a ray has hit that spot and it needs to now continue through that. What this new, I don't forget what they call it, sprite mode or something like that. What that does is it basically sees like these holes in the geometry. Yeah, stencils, that's what they're called. Thank you. So what the stencils do is they see this as not actually having any geometry there. So then the ray were to hit that spot, it doesn't hit and it just keeps on going through. So it reduces the calculation time. Also, these cards are being generated with prem variables, and then also the actual texture here is a new thing in Copernicus, the reaction diffusion solver. So let's keep moving through here. They talk about this for a minute, and then they move on to the MaterialX PBR surface, this Uber shader, which thank goodness I did not really care for the other shader inside of MaterialX. And this open PBR surface, if I remember correctly, I think this is supposed to mimic the Arnold shader, I believe. I could be like the Arnold Uber shader, if I remember correctly. They also are going to talk about in a minute a volume one, which I saw just recently, which is what you're seeing right now. So this is a open VDB MaterialX thing, I believe, shader. So it's like an Uber shader for volumes, which side effects and the people from Arnold were working on. And yeah, they're basically trying to, make this the standard for volume shaders, which I think is going to be really awesome. Is I think Arnold has one of the best looking shaders for volumes. And here they're just talking more about the prem vars. Open PBR is a subproject of MaterialX. Yeah. They're just talking more about the prem vars here, and they're using those to colorize these ducks. It's some interesting stuff, but not super incredible. This I think is really cool. So they have this MaterialX ray switch node, which allows you to switch your colors based off of how the rays hit your geometry. And this is awesome. Like I'm super excited to try this out. It allows you to basically, you'll see it in a second here when they actually go through and use this in a mix node, but it allows you to take the shaders and change them based upon how the rays are working in your scene. So my first thought when I saw that was we have this mirror here. So we take this mirror, and in here we have our person. So we could have like a camera with our person, with our shaded person here. We're looking at their face, and then we pan over to our mirror. And in the mirror, we have it switched to like, a face that's like demonized or something like that. You know what I mean? That was my initial thought with this. And you'll see them switching this here in just a second. I think that this is going to open up a lot of really awesome possibilities and allow you to do some really cool stuff. I think people are going to get really creative with this. So here you can see, our direct primary rays. We have this shader. The reflection, we have only that other shader. Super interesting stuff. All right, so what are you guys saying? Come out with open source HDR. Yeah. OpenEXR, so much in abstract. Yeah, abstract work and illusions, absolutely. That's where this ray switch will come in handy. So they move on to this, and I cannot explain just how important this feature is. And I mean, it's a small thing, but it's something that is incredibly important if you're using Karma. So it's allowing you to change your limits. So here you see if you are not you don't have your limits set high enough here, it's going to turn black in your render. But then that's how it's been so far. But up until now, we haven't been able to change that. But it allows you to change this now inside of Karma. So you can set your limit color with a geometry settings. And you can see here, we get where we don't have enough limits, it's going to give us that color. So it's going to help you debug your renders without having to do a bunch of guesswork. And I think that this is something that's super important. And I didn't even think about this being a thing, but it's so great that they added this in. And I just can't get it through to you guys how important this is for optimizing your scenes. And then sometimes things are finicky. He talks about this, and you can't seem to get them to work properly. So instead of having it turn black or bright pink or whatever, he sets it to a color that matches your scene, and then it kind of blends in, so it can kind of hide some of that stuff. So that's a super awesome feature, bring bot to Karma. Let's see, what do they move on to next? Some hair and fur shader stuff. This bear looks super sick. I love the simulation. Whoever did this did an amazing job. But I am not going to mess with the hair and fur anytime soon. I don't have any experience with it so far, and there's so much to learn. They also added a new outline shader. They've done some different things with shaders actually, which are pretty cool. But here they just talk about the outline shader. I hope it can be per object. So as far as it shows there with those render geometry settings, you can set those to be object specific. So I would highly anticipate that you can set that on a per object level. Here they're just talking about some of the different things that you can do with this shader. I think, they don't move on today. We'll cover that here a bit. Something important here that they take a look at is, I think this is, or at least this is an example of it. They show the being able to use objects and different things as render geometry lights, which is super important. Here they're talking about time samples and that inside of USD and being able to see exactly what's getting time samples and how much and everything like that. Good for debugging your scenes, setting up motion blur, things like that. Then they move on to this live render for Karma. This, I'm not super excited about this, but it allows you to live render to your render gallery. You can test out some different things. I'm sure it'll be useful for people that use the render gallery a lot, but I I just haven't used the render gallery all that much. I probably should more than I do, but again, not something that I'm going to be using a ton. Then they talk about emission. Words are difficult. So this is super cool. Clarice was the only thing that I've ever seen render emission as fast as I've seen emission be rendered. And I would love to see this happening, that fast as well. This looks like it's probably sped up some. So I'd be interested to see how fast the emission actually renders, but it looks like there's been some updates to it, and there's some pretty cool stuff that you can do with, emission and light lights in your scene. Yeah, Clarice rep. So this is all using their instance lights and stuff, and I forget what else they talked about there. This is also a really incredible render. Whoever did this did an amazing job with this as well. I don't think, oh, there you go. Shuba VFX Creator Studio. I think that was one of the better animations that they show off. This is something that I think is super awesome and brings the modern feel of render engines to Karma. So we're basically going to be able to take your renders and apply like these live filters to them. So they're going to, it's like compositing without, doing a lot of super deep compositing stuff. It's like when you render to your, like in Redshift, your render view and being able to apply post effects. That's what this is. And you're going to be able to set these all up yourself and generate, whatever you want. And then you can do this, and then you can also export this with your final renders as well as just in your viewport. And I'll take a look at that here in a second. Here they show it with this kind of like posterized effect. Not a huge fan of that. But they move on to, here's where they start to show some of the stuff. So playing with the different lighting effects and focus and, all these different, post effects that you'd see in other render engines. You can bring those into Houdini now. It's sort of like the slap comps, I guess, but this is kind of like the next evolution of it. How do I feel about Gorilla Render? I haven't looked at it all that much. I looked at it a little bit, and I don't think it's gonna serve me a huge purpose. It's kind of its own like layout and look dev thing, but not really super interested in that, especially with Karma and Solaris getting so good. HLSL. Yep, definitely excited to see what all people do with that stuff. I'll be interested to see people use that a lot. Then they move on to cops, which is the big thing in 21, or the other major feature other than the Apex stuff. This is kind of like the other main thing that they focused on. So they start off by showing this live camera feed to cops, which is kind of like their first iteration of bringing in camera, stuff to cops for like, compositing and stuff, or video, I should say, not camera stuff, but video. And I just want to say this right now, put it on record. If you remember back to the sneak peek, when I was talking about that, I specifically said in chat, I think, on the premiere of that video, that this was a precursor to camera tracking in Houdini. And they talk about that, which means that they are probably going to bring camera tracking to Houdini, just based off of what they said. So I'm going to call it right now. Camera tracking is coming to Houdini in 21.5 or 22. I'm going to just say that. It's going to happen. Mark my words. But yeah, so this doesn't feel like a feature that's going to be super useful, not in my workflow. I think it's a kind of a novelty thing that they added in there, but it's probably something that they needed in order to build more tools on top of that. They now move into this new scatter shapes, which is basically like a stamp points on steroids, it looks like. Just kind of like a wrapper around some like tools and stuff that you probably could have built yourself pretty easily, but apparently this works a lot faster than the stamp points. So be interesting to see if it does. I mean, the stamp points wasn't exactly slow. It's actually extremely fast. But there's a lot of stuff that's built in here that works, just kind of out of the box. You don't have to build anything out yourself. They also, I just missed it right there, but they added in this new cable pack, and there's a cable unpack there, which allows you to take a few inputs there, and we can combine them into one single wire here. And then sort of like a merge. This is like a merge and like this what's the word? The copy to points workflow with like variants. That's what this reminds me of. So we can use that new node here, and we can select which inputs we want. You can have it randomly assign. You can use a seed. All sorts of different things with that. Let's see if they, you can do effects on these all at once. So here they're just colorizing all these at once. You can add in, more as you go. So fully procedural there. It'll be awesome to, just speed up some different workflows inside of cops with that. You can use the different things to drive like their orientation and stuff, their scale, all the different features of it. There was another thing that they add in here. So here he talks about it being like motion designy type stuff. So I kind of get what he's saying. Could be interesting to play around with for motion design. Here they show it in a workflow for actually generating materials, this kind of scratches and paint type of a thing here. They also have this field type, this grass field with flowers, so it is useful in different ways. Again, here with the scattering of different assets onto this material. And then they talk about the curves, which are basically, this is where it really becomes kind of apparent that COPS is a 2D, 3D thing. So it works in 3D, but it is baking things down to a 2D, viewport. And if you don't fully understand that yet, it's going to become apparent in Houdini 21. But something here that I thought was pretty cool that they dropped down. So they dropped down this SOP invoke node, which is, I think we had an invoke block, but we didn't have this SOP invoke. So this is a new node. And what they take here is they take the COP network, and they're going to, or that's, well, I guess it's taking in this, the COP network, but this is geometry. So this is a red input, which in COPS is going to be a geometry input. So it recognizes this is geometry. And then inside of this invoke block, we can do different things with attributes, but I'm assuming you can do kind of anything you want with this. Let me see. Let me go back here where they drop down that attribute. Adjust flow. Yeah, so you have full access to SOPs in here. So you can do basically anything that you want here that's going to, work on the actual geometry that's being brought in, which is pretty interesting. We'll see what comes of that. But they add in some things to control the, thickness and stuff of the curve. So you can add attributes to that and generate some things to control that inside of the SOPs that it's a little bit more familiar, and also allows you to do things that work across the whole geometry without having to fiddle around with making it align to the curve itself. They also show being able to resample this on the node itself, I don't know where it went, but you can resample the curves, directly in COPS, which is pretty nice too. You can control the subdivisions there. Here they're drawing another one, and this is where they start to talk about the 2D, 3D interactivity of this. Let's move to where do they get to that? So they're colorizing it. And here's where they start to actually, move these around in 3D. So even though this is being rendered as a 2D plane, we can control the placement of them in 3D space to basically the camera to see, we can make stuff overlap where we want or go behind the objects, which is super powerful. I think that's it for that. They output UVs, which is to be expected, I guess. Something that's interesting here, though, I wanted to point out that this actually tiles perfectly, which is super cool that you can just draw a curve and have it tile in your viewport. This animation was pretty cool. Some nice type of like MoGraphy type stuff. Interesting little abstract effect there. And then what do they move on to here? Oh, this is the like stamping a object onto those points, which basically is like taking basically I think the way that this is going to work is essentially draw the curve, you have your points, it's like taking an add node in and just leaving all the points and then wiring that into a stamp points, and it just kind of does everything for you. This nice chain effect looks pretty good. But again, this is all it has lighting applied to it, which is like having karma almost in your viewport. Be able to bake lighting into that. And then they do this like little growth animation here. This one's pretty cool. This gave me a good thought of like being able to like push around your COPS textures with your own COPS, with other elements of your COPS texture, I guess. This is a really cool, stylized animation. They did a really good job with this as well, and just another more abstract stuff, that you can play around with. I really like the particles, following along the object here. All right, and then they start talking about some of the noises. So there's a new phaser noise. I wanted to kind of go frame by frame through this, but I'm not going to do that right now. See if I can pick out anything else they added in here. But new phaser noise, there's a couple of them, I think, that were listed on the sneak peek in the like end credits. So we got some new noises coming to COPS, and definitely these new grunges. Oh, this was what they said is not ready yet, coming to the first like production build. So kind of disappointed that that's not going to be coming right from the start, but hopefully pretty quick it'll be brought into Houdini 21. We'll have all those noises available to us. And then there's the material library, which again has like the bark textures and these different textures here. Really awesome stuff. I'm guessing you're going to be able to make your own library, and there'll be some sort of interface for that. They talk about some Houdini engine stuff. We'll go ahead and skip over that. I'm not super interested in that, but basically bringing COPS into Houdini engine, which is going to be super powerful for those of you who use Unreal to bake out your stuff, or Unity. Now they move on to the fluid solvers, and this is where COPS gets super, super interesting. They have some new, I think 3 new solvers that are in COPS that allow you to do some awesome stuff. So here he's wiring in this shape, and he's going to use this as the temperature field for his solver. So this is the fluid solver, and they do all sorts of interesting stuff in this. And this is just where COPS gets super interesting, and not just COPS, but the noises and grunges are coming to 20.5. They should be like already out then. I would assume, because then or like coming in the next like day or two then, because 21's coming by the end of the month according to their website. So anyways, back to this fluid solver. This is where it gets super interesting because it's linking these next three solvers really like link all of Houdini together with Cops and just show like the true power of what Cops is going to be capable of. This is just this look right here is super awesome. I can't. This is probably gonna be one of the first things I take a look at. In all honesty, is the new solvers inside of Cops because this is so incredibly powerful. It's all working. This is happening like in real time, and it's so fast to iterate. There's also a live simulation thing. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed this here. I noticed this, and I'm confused. Maybe this is. I don't know why there's every second there's this new tick mark in our timeline. I don't know why that is, but it's something that I noticed. I don't know if that's like a checkpoint thing or something. I'm not sure. You stopped paying attention to anything after karma. Oh yeah, I agree with that. So as a library in Cops, I'm not sure what you mean. But yeah, so there's this solver, the fluid solver. There's all sorts of interesting things that you can do with this. This is going to be absolutely crazy to see what people come up with. They already have shown some different things here. So here they're using it to drive basically some movement of your textures in Cops. This is really cool. This example that they showed. They're just layering things. This is all just in Cops. They're basically just layering, a bunch of things together. They've got this is geometry, I think, and they're using that to drive the curves. So that would have been the curves, the tools that we just took a look at just a second ago. They're bringing that in. They added some, animation to that, and this is like a 2.5D thing. And then they add in the fluid effects, that fluid solver to get this nice little MoGraphy type animation, little interesting like background type thing, which I think looks pretty cool. Do I think that they're going to be pushing more in compositing in Cops? Absolutely not in 20.21 though. Probably in 21.5 to 22, they'll push more to compositing. Here they're bringing in that fluid motion to outside of Houdini to add these types of fluid motions to different things. Like, but this one's a vellum grain simulation. Super interesting stuff going on with this. I think that you could probably do that in 20.5 to some degree, but not like this. Then they just do some more examples here. Pretty interesting stuff. Interesting movement. And then what did they move on to here? I don't remember what this one was. Oh, this is the reaction diffusion. So we saw this with the cards. Interesting, reaction diffusion setup. That's something that is pretty popular in Houdini. I've done it before, the reaction diffusion stuff. It's a common Houdini-esque thing. And it works super quickly. You can layer these together. They talk about how they use it to drive, or they use the fluid solver to drive the effect of the reaction diffusion here at some point in time. But it all works super quick. Everything's working this 2.5D, this Cops stuff. And it's so fast. Everything's running off of OpenCL basically inside of Cops, or at least most things are. And it just makes it super quick to iterate. But yes, it definitely will be moving towards Cops or compositing in Cops, just not in 21. Yeah, I get what you're saying with the notch thing. That was my thought too. Well, there is a touch designer, which is basically like Houdini, but for like real-time stuff. Like I said, I think it was kind of a like a first step thing that they needed in order to do some things in the future that we're not aware of yet. One of those, I almost guarantee you, will be um, camera tracking. And then this is just more examples of them using, cop stuff to drive other effects inside of Houdini. So we got their particles effects, those flying off, really cool stuff. This is opening up a world of possibilities, cops is inside of Houdini. And I think it's going to be really awesome to see what people do with it once they, fully jump into it, which I think is going to happen in 21. This is where that fluid is driving that reaction diffusion algorithm here. And then the last solver thing, which is I think going to be one of the last things we talk about at least, is going to be this new Pyro solver in Copernicus. So this is it is in Copernicus. This is going to be super confusing for people who think Copernicus is just 2D and compositing. But this is a fully 3D solver, but it's native to Copernicus. So you can take this, and you saw it right here. So you can see that this is a 3D volume. It's being rasterized here. If we look here, so we have this pyro block. We have a light, which we have lighting in Copernicus to some degree for pyro. And then we're rasterizing this volume. So this is a new node, rasterize volume inside of COPS, which is huge. It's huge. You can anything that you have that is a volume, you can now rasterize into COPS, which opens up a world of possibilities. I will talk more about that in a moment. But we have this 3D volume that is being generated inside of Copernicus. So this is in Copernicus. It runs off of like a back end of Copernicus, right? But it gets rasterized down to 2D. And then you can also light this. They'll show it here in a moment. You can also light this inside of Copernicus as well. There's also a live simulation, which allows you to just simulate without using the timeline and, dial in your settings, and then you can go through and do whatever you need to with your settings and set up like keyframe animation and stuff. Here they see, so let's go back here. So we have this pyro ambient light, we have light scatter and pyro light from points. We also just have a regular light, looks like, inside of COPS now. And this is going to allow us to wire this into this ambient light. So we can use this light, and then we can use a curve. So here he's using a curve as an input for the points, I guess. So it's got 2 points is what he's going to do here. And he's going to use that to light this this pyro. It's pretty sweet stuff. I went too far, sorry. Let's go back. So here you can see him playing with the density scale. You can see him playing with the intensity. Let me just play this. So he plays with the density scale, the intensity. So you can basically fake like rendering a volume directly into COPS. So like some background type stuff, this is perfect for that. It's real time, happens instantly, and you can get some nice lighting with this. So really awesome, capabilities here with Copernicus. And here you can see it happening, in real time as he's playing through the viewport. Hi, I am doing good. It is almost the next day now. I need to get some sleep soon, but I wanted to take a look at this because I was just super excited with what I've seen here. Here we're looking at the live render. So you can see we're not playing on our timeline, but it's simulating, and he's able to change the different settings, move around the emitter there, and it's all happening, continuously. You also have this new toggle button that allows you to turn it off, and that's a global setting, I guess he says. because you can have multiple live simulations going at the same time, which sounds kind of crazy. And probably computationally heavy, but you can move around this all in real time and you get some awesome live simulation stuff. And it's kind of like, EmberGen or something. I think you'll be able to make the pyrosim based on a mask of a video you import. I'm not sure how you would go about to that, but you probably. I would anticipate that if you were able to somehow extract the data that you needed, you would be able to do that. They've also added a couple of different things in here. So we've got a bend and a warp tool for a mesh warp tool for cops. So you can like bend this all around and do some things that would be a little bit more expensive to do inside of SOPs if you were trying to do this with volumes. Let's go through here. And then they talk about, I'm going to play through these because these are actually really cool. They talk about stylized rendering and how we can use this to, how we can use cops along with the tools that we get with this pyro stuff inside of cops to generate these types of effects. So we get bloom going on here that they've added in. This is more of an abstract effect. And then they move on to showing some stylized adaptation to it, which I think looks really good, as well as some sort of like magical one that I think also looks pretty good. Give this a second to play through. Lots of interesting stuff coming to cops, and just Houdini in general is getting a major upgrade. This is one of the biggest updates as far as like, game changing stuff, I feel like, that has happened in the past couple of updates. So lots of cool stuff here that they're doing with cops. And then we have this, fire tornado that they add in here. And I think this is all running off of that Copernicus shader. But here, this is actually an output of Karma, I believe. So this is interesting. And what they talk about here is, cops is not just limited to itself. It's not just limited to cops. It's a lot like Apex. If you look at how they worked on Apex and how they've been working on cops, they're tying into all of Houdini. And that's very important to note that you can export or you can take this cop simulation that they have here. This is a pyro simulation from cops. It's fully 3D, and they've brought it, out of cops, and they're rendering it with Karma. And I mean, obviously it looks pretty good. Yeah, Houdini dropping 10 years worth of Maya Max updates in one version. More like every other, like you can take Maya Max, Blender, Cinema 4D, you can take all of their yearly updates and drag them together, and it wouldn't be half of what Houdini is adding every year. And then this example, they're just showing a curve advection using the Pyro from Cops as a base, which is pretty cool. For who was it that asked about? Oh, Fies. This is more compositing stuff. So there is some compositing capability in 21. It's going to be becoming, and some updates that you can do some basic compositing now, in my opinion, because they've fixed the crypto mat, which we'll see here in a minute. But they talk about this scene here, which they have just this export. It's been exported to EXRs, and in that you can store camera data, which there is now a toggle for that allows you to load the camera, or maybe that was there, I don't know, but allows you to bring in a EXR, and you can load the camera data, which then you can also load it in your depth pass, and it allows you to work in this like 2.5D type thing that you'd see in like After Effects or something. So they take this, they add in one of those pyro simulations from Cops, and they place it in 3D space. And then they use this crypto mat here. So they're placing it here. It's still in front of this object. Once they add in, the different passes, they're going to place it in front of this. So it's now composited on top, but obviously they want to place it, behind objects. And they load in the crypto mats, which now work inside of 21. So the workflow for this, you're going to add in a null, and then you're going to be able to click this little eyedropper up here and select your object, and it will add that to the list, which was not a thing in 20.5. I don't know why on earth they did not finish that before they even added this node in, because you had to know the names of every object that you exported in order for the cryptomat to work at all. And it looked so stupid to use. It was like not even functional. Like, I don't know why they ever added this without that little eyedropper functionality, but I digress. It's in there now, and that's what that's what matters. So they're using that to drive their crypto mat, place that smoke asset behind that building, which it looks pretty good. So this, and then again, this is not being rendered. This smoke asset is literally being simulated as they go, composited in real time on top of this scene. And here they have it, fully, I'm assuming at this point, right? They have this lit with that preview, these smoke assets. All these smoke assets are directly from cops, is my understanding. And they have them lit with that lighting shader inside of cops as well. They're not actually rendering this out. They're compositing it directly through Karma. There is no like Karma, or not Karma, sorry, through cops. There is no Karma rendering that's going on here. It's solely through cops, is my understanding. And it looks super, super good. Like, this is passable, absolutely passable, especially for those background assets, 100%. Like, this looks good. And you've even got some here kind of in the foreground, and you can see that where you would have this, glow effect coming from this sign here. It's even lighting up the volumes there with that, and as well as, your surrounding areas as well. So it looks really good. They did a really good job with this, and I'm excited to see what all comes from that. I've got some ideas I'm going to keep to myself for now for the pyro and the lighting and stuff. And that's where I think I'm going to stop. A, it's getting late here, and B, I haven't actually watched this part yet, which I know that there's new NPM stuff, and I'm excited to look at that. I forgot NPM's like the third thing that they added that's super, got some major upgrades. But I haven't actually watched through this yet, so I want to watch through that on my own, and I haven't messed around with NPM all that much anyways. So, or they've done some other things with dynamics too. So I'll look at those on my own, but I'm not going to talk about that. Like I said, it's getting late, and I just wanted to kind of look at the cop stuff, the stuff that excites me the most. Seems like, yeah, the new NPM stuff is nuts from that. Where'd it go? This this simulation was incredible. I don't know who did that simulation. Peter Sinatra. That's right. Fantastic job. You did an amazing job on this simulation. That was awesome. But anyways, seems like you need a crypto primitive pass through which I don't think any renderer can export that except Karma though. Crypto primitive. Oh, let's jump back here. Oops. Oh, I forgot where did that go? Oh, it shows like this is a library of pre-built stuff that they added in here. So here you can actually see this is that Karma, or I keep saying Karma, but the cops solver, the smoke solver, being interactive with 3D geometry. And I'm guessing this is all rendered to one plane. This is not actually like a viewport thing. This is all being rendered to cops. But let's go back here. I keep skipping over it. All right, so we need crypto primitive. No, so this is just the crypto. This is just the crypto mat pass. Actually look at adding, this is where they add in. So they add in all their CryptoMats passes. So we've got, or all their different AOVs. I mean, sorry, not CryptoMat passes, but AOVs. And then they select a bunch and they delete them all out with this new multi-parm UI stuff. But I think this is just a normal CryptoMat pass. It's just called in Karma the crypto primitives, probably. I don't think that that's anything special. It's just a normal CryptoMat pass. I could be wrong though. But anyways, I think that is going to wrap it up. I'm super excited for this. I think that this is going to be one of the biggest updates in years for Houdini. I think that genuinely at this point, if you're not using Houdini, you need to start, because it's only going to get even better from here on out. And they've been moving towards this one-stop 3D program for everything, sort of like Blender has been at for a couple years now. But this is on another level. So jump into Houdini for anybody that's not already learning it. So it should work with any crypto. Yes, I think it should. It should. And that eyedropper should, select whatever you have selected. Because CryptoMats, you can export CryptoMats with object IDs, material IDs, different things. So it should be able to grab all that. That's all stored in the actual EXR itself. The data is, so it should work. But anyways, thank you guys for hanging out and talking about the stuff coming to 21. Sounds like it will be, according to the website, should be out by the end of the month. It says late August. My anticipation, part of me hopes they drop it early, but part of me hopes they wait till the 25th or after, because I'm got some stuff going on before then that will prevent me from being able to look at it, and I'll just be sitting tortured thinking about it, watching everybody else create awesome stuff while I'm not. So my anticipation, though, if I were to bet on 3 dates, would be the 20th, let me look at the calendar again. What did I say? The 20th, the 25th, or the 27th for a release date. That'd be my guess. I'm guessing probably the 25th if I had to bet. But that's just a guess. So we'll see. Anyways, like I said, thank you guys for hanging out with me and looking at the new stuff. Super excited to test it all out. We'll be taking a look at a bunch of the new features as soon as I possibly can. So you guys have a good night, and we'll see you in the next few weeks.